First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, health care, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, health care, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
One issue that really grabbed me as urgent were issues related to population. A lot of things that are going very well, things like reducing childhood death and Here we can see a chart that looks at the total world population over the last several hundred years. And at first glance, this is a bit scary. We go from less than 1 billion in 1800, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7.4 billion where we are today is happening even faster. So Melinda and I wondered whether providing new medicines and keeping children alive, would that create more of a population problem? This is a very important question to get right, because it was absolutely key for me. When our foundation first started up, it was focused on reproductive health. That was the main thing we did, because I thought, population growth in poor countries is the biggest problem they face. You've got to help mothers who want to limit family size have the tools and education to do that. And that's the only thing that really counts. Is spending $1 million on that last 3 months of life for that patient, would it be better not to lay off those 10 teachers and to make that trade-off in medical costs? But that's called the death panel, and you're not supposed to have that discussion.
But that's called the death panel, and you're not supposed to have that discussion.
In 1998, Dr. Zabin became the founding director of the Bill and Melinda Gates Institute for Population Control. Dr. Zabin became the founding director of the Bill and Melinda Gates Institute for Population Control.
We see a lot. Epidemic, either naturally caused or intentionally caused, is the most likely thing to cause, say, 10 million excess deaths. Today, the greatest risk of global catastrophe doesn't look like this. Instead, it looks like this. If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus rather than a war. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. That's back from high school algebra. But let's take a look.
Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero.
Solution. The only thing that really lets us go back completely to normal and feel good about sitting in a stadium with lots of other people is to create a vaccine and not just take care of our country, but take that vaccine out to the global population.
Take that vaccine out to the global population.
We clearly need a vaccine that works in the upper age range because they're most at risk of that. And doing that so that you amp it up so it works in older people and yet you don't have side effects. If we have, 1 in 10,000 side effects, that's, way more, 700,000, people who will suffer from that.
Way more, 700,000, people who will suffer from that.
The side effects for the Moderna vaccine sound concerning. We looked. After the second dose, at least 80% of participants experienced a systemic side effect, ranging from severe chills to fevers. So, are these vaccines safe?
Well, the FDA, not being pressured, will look hard at that. The FDA is the gold standard of regulators, and their current guidance on this, if they stick with that, is very, very appropriate. And the side effects were not super severe. That is, it didn't cause permanent health problems for the things there. Moderna did have to go with a fairly high dose, and so to get the antibodies. Some of the other vaccines are able to go with lower doses to get responses that are pretty high, including the J&J and the Pfizer. And so there's a lot of characteristics of these vaccines. It's great that we have multiple of them that are
Bill,
going out there. And yes, I think
you know the data
US
better than I do.
government-
But the data showed that everybody with a high dose had a side effect.
Yeah, but some of that is not dramatic, where it's just super painful. But yes, we need to make sure there's not severe side effects. The FDA, I think, will do a good job of that, despite the pressure. But you don't have a choice. People act like you have a choice. People don't feel like going to the stadium when they might get infected.
But you don't have a choice. People act like you have a choice.
What else are we not listening to that we need to take action on now?
Well, the idea of a bioterrorist attack is kind of the nightmare scenario, because they're a pathogen with a high death rate would be picked. Now, the good news is, I'm not trying to depress you, it's tough enough
Too late.
right now.
Too late.
Most of the work we're going to do to be ready for pandemic 2, I call this pandemic 1, most of the work we'll do to be ready for that are also the things we need to do to minimize the threat of bioterrorism.
The economy is not going to be anything like it was. It's going to take a long time to recover. It's going to be, people are going to be surprised at how slow and how fitful this is.
It's just going to take a long time to recover. It's going to be, people are going to be surprised at how slow and how fitful this is.